Hello and welcome to MINKA Vision. I'm your host, Trisha Davies, and today my guest is Kiki Williams, who is an interdisciplinary uh, meditator, yogi, dancer, teacher. Kiki, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Awesome. So since you are a meditator and teacher, would you mind just leaving us in a quick drop-in to ground us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on the floor, which you don't need to be, but bring your body into a space that feels comfortable for you. That could be seated, that could be lying down, that could be standing. And if you have the ability to allow the feet to widen along the floor or sit cross-legged and feel the legs settled into the earth. And then find a space for the eyes that feels comfortable and grounding. So for some, that might be closed fully. For others, perhaps having the gaze slightly open and towards the floor. Or perhaps finding a single point to fix your attention on to settle the gaze. And then begin to bring a sense of awareness into your breath. And perhaps what that means for you today is noticing where you feel your breath in your body most prominently. So opening with a little bit of curiosity, as if you were to simply watch the breath from the outside. Where does it travel? Where does it reside when you breathe in? In the belly, in the chest, somewhere in the back. And then follow its ebb and flow, its inhale and exhale. The gentle expansion on the in-breath and the contraction on the out-breath. And then beginning to let that breath shift and move a little bit, bring some awareness into the crown of the head. And as if the top of the head had grown a lung, take a deep breath into the top of the head. Bringing awareness into the face, take a breath into the face, feeling the cheeks and the eyelids melt down towards the earth. Starting to let the body settle with each breath, moving into your shoulders. Take a deep breath into the shoulders and the upper back. Feel the shoulders drop down as you exhale. Take a deep breath into the entire right arm. Breathe deeply into the chest. Into the belly. Into your upper back. Into your lower back. Into the hips. Into the right thigh. The left thigh. The right lower leg. The left lower leg. The right foot. And the left foot. And with an awareness of the whole body, allow your breath to begin to move into the entire body as if it was one single lung, expanding out in all directions as you breathe in. And feeling a sense of coming inward as you breathe out. So not so much contraction, but rather this drawing in towards the core. a grounding into the belly, into the pelvis, into the legs. Take 2 more breaths just like that on your own timing, breathing in as fully as you'd like, and simply letting the breath leave you as you exhale, soft through the navel. And with your next exhale, perhaps letting your chin just drop down toward your chest. Gently let your eyes blink fully open. Take a moment to let the light in the space that you're in come back into your field of vision. And then very easily lift the head back on top of the spine.
Wow, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That was beautiful. Mm. Yes, I feel grounded and I feel buzzing,
Mm-hmm.
buzzing awareness of presence. Mm.
Yeah, I really love, I mean, it's probably part of the reason I'm a yoga teacher too, but I really love anything that like really gets me into my body and like focuses on specific things. So sometimes I love using the breath in that way. Sometimes I like a really like actually touching, feeling, like waking up the skin. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Mm, thank you so much. Can you tell us about your journey into yoga?
Yeah. So I've always been a very body oriented, movement oriented person. And my dad actually likes to tell the story about when I started to crawl and I just bypassed the knees and would always crawl in my hands and feet. So essentially I was just in a down dog from like my babyhood.
Wow.
But yeah, I was always really, really physical and I began dancing and I ended up going to school to university for dance. And it was kind of this winding journey of like various movement paths, but it was through my dance life and through my time at Ohio State where I went to school where I ended up taking my first yoga class. And it was incredible. And I was actually drawn primarily to the teachings more so than the physical practice.
Yeah.
They go hand in hand, you know, in a lot of ways. And so when I moved to New York in 2011, I just continued to teach class or just continued to take class, excuse me, and to kind of hone in on my own practice and to continue to dive into the teachings. And it's this space of, I find this both with my meditation practice and with my yoga practice. It's like, wow, experiencing this sense of like newfound freedom in my body. Like as I am opening up my body over time and feeling what I can feel in my body when it's open, when it feels free, when it feels strong. I was like, I have to share this. Other people must know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Um, I just love that you were led to yoga through dance. Had you found that you were sort of already embodying like the life of a yogi before you dove deeper into the philosophy of it? Or was it sort of like a kind of a new revelation as you were studying and learning?
Good question. I was seeking. I grew up, it's like deeply, for me, it's deeply related to my spirituality. And when I was growing up, I grew up, you know, super Christian. And it was not something that I felt very aligned with most of the time. And so when I was in college and then I started taking this class, which again was really like philosophy oriented and teachings oriented, I was like, oh, it started to,
Like, wait.
yeah. And I mean, I also had this super transformative experience in one of the classes where we were in like a plank or something. I don't remember. It was something very taxing on the body. It was hard. And the teacher was talking about energy and sensation, and they were saying something to the, this was years ago, but they were saying something to the effect of like, you know, a lot of people might call this pain, you know, but it's energy, and energy moves in different ways. And there was probably something else, again, it was a while ago, but I remember thinking to myself like, oh, like you're right, like this is just energy, and the way that I feel my palms against the floor, that's energy, and the way that I feel my breath moving in my body, like that's energy. And it was like this huge moment for me, and I was like, this is what God is.
Oh,
It's like
oh,
it
that's
was
so
weird.
beautiful.
I know, and I was like, because I'd been sort of searching and trying for years, like through my Christian faith, to try to, you know, like feel God in a way.
Mm-hmm.
It manifest for me in that context. And so in that moment, I was like, oh, it was really wild.
I just love that so much. That really reminds me, or resonates with me as well. I discovered yoga in college, and it was it was interesting because I was actually in India, like I went to study abroad, and that was my first time experiencing like a yoga asana class. And when I came back, I think I just had like, I actually need to think about this more, but I think I had like I was having a crisis of faith. I was having like this experience of, you know, I went to this place and it was just like God was everywhere all the time, you know. And then like here in the West, it was like just very, you know, my experience was just very compartmentalized. And
Mm-hmm.
so even though I had the experience of feeling that, it was, there's still a lot, I think, blocking my mental body from making that connection. Um, yeah.
Yeah,
Super.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Especially being here, because like you said, things are completely separate. And I feel this particularly in New York City, for me in New York City. Like I'm a huge nature baby. And so
Mhm.
for me, when I'm out in nature, whether that's like the mountains or the desert or the forest or the jungle or like whatever, I automatically feel this greater sense of like support energetically, and like connection, that I don't feel so much amongst the concrete, or that I feel like I have to more consciously cultivate.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I get
I
it.
definitely feel that. And so, you know, you offering classes at MINKA as a part of our partnership. And the way I'm thinking of it now is like a practitioner exchange,
Yeah.
because I think it's so great that we get to have, you know, experience practitioners who we wouldn't normally or otherwise have access to. Can you talk a little bit about how community has played a role in your personal healing journey?
Yes, it's everything. um, so I'll speak specifically to my, I think in this moment, to my meditation practice first. Um, I maybe 5 years ago went through this really challenging time. I call it my year of loss. And it was like a year and a half where just like everything and everyone that I thought sort of, you know, created my life disappeared. And it was actually a really great teaching and non-attachment, but it was really, really, really hard. It was, I fell into like my first deep depressive mode, and I didn't even know what it was. I was like, what is this? I'm just crying for like 3 weeks. It was really, really terrible. And it got to a point, and I was eventually like, I need help. Um, and my friend had invited me to a meditation sit, a people of color meditation sangha a while ago, like months prior. And I was like, I'm gonna just go to that and like find friends, because like all my friends had moved from New York. So I felt like my community had disappeared. And so I started going to this people of color and allies sit that met twice a month at Brooklyn Zen Center. And as soon as I started going, I was like, yep, this is it. Not only because there were people in community, but the teachings, again, it was like, oh, it was like a new layer on top of like what I'd been doing and learning through my yoga practice. in Theravada Buddhism was the practice. And so I started going there, and that has been huge for me, to be able to meet with folks, to be able to grow with folks in that space, to begin to create relationships where the conversations are really like vulnerable. And now I actually facilitate the Sangha now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, things have changed over time. Yeah. And yeah, and so being able to, like, there are folks who I still sit with, who I've been with for the entire 5 years.
Wow.
And I can come to them with anything. I can show up anyway. And that's so necessary for healing. So that's a huge, huge thing. And the same is true for Third Root. I call Third Root my second home. And it really, truly is. And a lot of people there are like, you know, my chosen family, who I love deeply, who, again, I can just show up so authentically. I remember teaching last year my first class at Third Root after one of our friends and colleagues died very suddenly in a car accident, in a bicycle accident. And I was so nervous just about how, you know, that space of like, how are you going to hold space when you're in your own shit, like very deeply. And I remember I sat at the front of the class, and I knew, I was like, I'm going to cry. And I started by saying, I'm glad you're all here. I'm probably going to cry in a few moments. And I did. And I taught this class like while weeping. And I was just there and present, you know, and it was this reciprocal space of like holding space for each other. That was really beautiful. And I really appreciate about being in community space in that way.
Wow, that is really beautiful. I love that you call Third Root your second home. I call MINKA my home away from home, you know, because I'm away, like far away right now, in North Carolina. But yeah, community is just so powerful, you know, and it's one of those things of being an individual, being in your own experience, but then how you show up with others, I think, is really important. And then we get to practice that with people that we love and care about, these values. So
yeah.
With MINKA and Third Root, like we have a lot in common. Specifically, like our commitment to social justice and anti-racism. Can you talk a little bit about your social justice work and how your personal practice leads into that?
Me, it's a couple different things. So another sort of like realm of teaching that I've been moving through is I teach for a nonprofit called Bent on Learning. And they bring yoga and meditation into New York City public schools, primarily during the school day. So it can become a part of the curriculum in some way. So that's been a huge space for me. As far as like I work with high schoolers and they're pretty amazing. And for me, when I think about my role as like, it's so funny. This is something that's been coming up for me and really like thinking about how I communicate this over the past several months in particular. And I remember there was this like meme going around towards the beginning of like, I don't know, maybe a few months ago, that was talking about folks' different roles, like within a movement, within a social justice movement, and like the necessity of all of these different roles. And for me, what I think about it is really about the level of freedom that one can have within one's own being and one's own body, in your own experience, regardless of like the external. And that was something I kind of had to not let go of completely, but in a sense let go of. That was like, okay, some of the like external social justice movement, like in terms of like folks who are out organizing, I'm not organizer. That is not my strong point. But in terms of like bringing folks into a greater awareness of their own body, of like, what is this feeling that I have here? Is this a trauma that comes from something in my life? And like, how do I sit with that? How do I process that? How do I learn new skills for like regulating my nervous system? Which is also super important when you are out organizing. Like, that's huge for me. And so being able to do that with high school students, like with youth, is also huge, because
Yeah.
you see, like, it was like every day was like a miracle. Like, I felt like I would like look at them from like the beginning of class to the end, or even just the first few moments when we would take some like deep belly breathing, and you can feel the energy shift in the room. And it's such a transformative thing. So I think that's something for me, in my personal practice. I think you asked me something about that, is completely interrelated. Like, there's nothing, or in every moment, I'm always sort of questioning myself, not in a like, what am I doing? Well, sometimes it is like that. What am I doing in life? But questioning my habits and my conditioning, and like in this sort of constant movement towards my own healing and liberation, and like having to be curious about myself all the time. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
my train of thought there at the end.
No, that was so perfect. Thank you so much. And I love that you described working with young people as like everyday miracles, you know, because you never know what they're going to remember, and like what seed you're planting within them, that's going to, you know, definitely pay off in how they respond to something or how they view themselves. I just think that's so powerful.
Yeah, that's a huge teaching thing too, is like remembering, like, you never know what impact you're going to have on folks. You know, I remember when I was first teaching, and I like had this preconceived notion that everyone had to have a ginormously transformative experience in the one class, you know? It was like, you want people to feel what you feel, essentially, or like experience what you've experienced. Like, this is so great. And sometimes you just like don't know. Sometimes folks have on their very like serious, like, we are focused face. You're not entirely sure what their internal experience is like. But I've had like some students come back to me, students who I thought were completely uninterested. And they'd be like,
Wow.
yeah, Miss, like, I remembered what you taught about like breath, and I was feeling nervous before a test. And so I tried it. And then you're just like, my heart.
Oh, that's so beautiful. um, and I also wanted to ask about your yoga classes specifically. When you teach open level yoga, why is that important to kind of make that distinction, you know, between like this is a beginner class or intermediate? Can you talk a little bit about like why it's important to be, or to, yeah, specify open level versus like a specific ability?
Yeah. I love open level classes for a few reasons. And I think sometimes what happens is that when there's a specific sort of level, beginning, intermediate, advanced, folks have some preconceived notions about what they're going to experience in the class. And say, for example, someone who's very, very new to yoga is like, ooh, I'm not going to go to the intermediate because it'll be too challenging. And someone who perhaps has been practicing for a while is like, oh, I'm not going to go to the beginner class because it's too easy. Whereas when you come into an open level class, there's a couple things that happen. One, it kind of presents this sort of like middle ground, which gives folks who are newer this opportunity to stretch and grow, and to also see folks who perhaps have been practicing for a longer time. And then for the folks who have been experienced, it really challenges, I feel, if they're open to it, it can challenge you to have beginner's eyes and beginner's body, to remember that like honestly, I take basics classes and they're hard because there's so much like strength building. You're like in plank forever, you know? And so there's something to learn. And it is also that aspect of like community. It's not about like a level, like levels are fake, you know? When you're doing asana, you're just moving your body and you're breathing and you're trying to be present. That's really what the yoga is just about presence, not about what posture you're doing. And then I think as a teacher as well, what that does is it's a really awesome experience in an open level class, because I am working and moving in response to whoever is present. So it's not like I always have some degree of a plan, but it shifts and changes depending on who's in the room with me or who's on the Zoom call with me. You know, and then I work in response to that, and it becomes this really kind of like energetic collaboration between me and everyone who's in the space.
I love that. Yeah, it's all about who's, you know, the energy that we show up with, and if we're open to receiving the experience that we're gonna have, you know. I think that, yeah, it's about kind of releasing control of it, you know, and being open to whatever shows up.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, all you.
So my last question I wanted to ask is, what is your vision for a post-pandemic world?
Mm-hmm. So I really love this question. And when you sent me the email with this question, I was like, let me think on this. But it came to me pretty quickly. It's something I've been thinking about quite a bit. And I actually this image popped into my mind, and this image was of Black folks on land, farming, in the sun, laughing. And part of that is my own vision and dream for myself. But the feeling that I had in that was a feeling of freedom, and a feeling of joy, and the feeling of community. And those are the things that I want. Mm-hmm. And I can't say that I have all of the like specific ways in which that is going to happen, but from this feeling senses, that is what I want. Is I want people to feel fully free all the time, and to have an endless capacity for joy, and to know that they are loved and supported and cared for. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just want to close my eyes and kind of sit with that image, because it's so beautiful. And I think it really just honors all of our ancestors and everything that they endured and overcame that led to us being here in this moment.
Mm-hmm. Ashe.
I'm thinking about raspberries right now.
I was going to ask you, I was like, when you think about, I was curious if you had your own image.
Wow. Yeah. So this is totally from Ashni, from Sundar Ashni. Okay, yeah, shout out to Ashni. Ashni, I love you so much. I remember one of the first times I met her, she was eating or was about to eat some kale. And the way that she was like just really present with the kale, I was like, oh my gosh, I've never enjoyed like food that much. Like, I want that, you know? And so, yeah, she's leading a certification in light language, I think this weekend. And so she was talking about how light language kind of gets at the very cellular, like the essence of things. And she was talking about how, you know, a cucumber is a cucumber and a raspberry is a raspberry. And I was just, yeah, I just saw like the very bright, like juicy raspberries.
Yeah.
uh, wow, so beautiful. Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to leave with the people before we go?
I don't think so. I'm excited to be a part of MINKA, even in this virtual space, in this virtual community. I've been to MINKA a few times before the pandemic. Well, I would say several. And it's a space that I very much think would have been perhaps my third home after a third root. So virtual for now. I'm excited to continue to hang and meet with all of the MINKA community on the interwebs.
Yes, yes.
Thank you so much, Trisha, for today.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so grateful for your presence, and I'm excited to take your class. Yeah, so it's on Thursdays, right? What time?
Thursdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's a 1-hour class, 7 to 7 p.m. And
Beautiful.
I've been doing a really good job at ending on time, which is like good for me. So, so it really is just 1 hour.
Yes, 1 hour and it's open level. So yeah, just leave any ideas of how you think it's gonna go and just show up and yeah, see what happens.
Exactly. We'll just play around. I think yoga for me is so playful. You know, we're just like trying new things, like connecting to that child energy of like, I'm gonna do this thing and like fall over. Like it's totally fine. So I promote lots of playfulness and falling over in class.
Oh, I love that. Well, thank you so much, and definitely we'll talk to you again soon.
Great. Thank you.
Bye.